My name is Thomas Frank, 92939.
And what branch were you in?
U.S. Navy,
And what was your rank?
Airman, AB.
So let's just go back to the beginning. What were you doing before you signed up?
I just graduated from high school. I went on, I was only 17 years old, and I went in on the plan where you get out when you're 21.
And I guess, why did you join?
Well, I figured I needed to get out in the world, I guess you could say.
What were other people doing at the time?
Well, some were getting ready to go to college, some had jobs down at different small factories, and I figured it'd be a good way to learn a little bit about the world.
Why did you pick the Navy?
Well, my uncle was in the Navy, and I had a cousin that was in the Navy in World War II, and I just thought that'd be a good branch to get into.
Do you remember the first days in the service?
Well, I went to boot camp.
What was that like?
Well, it was fairly easy. They picked us up on a bus, took us to Buffalo, and from there we got on a train and went to Bainbridge, Maryland. And then they put us all, there's 4 of us guys from Cottasport that joined together. We all graduated together. And once we got there, they gave us a billet on where we were going to be bunking at. You couldn't have electric razors or anything, so you had to do a wet razor deal, which I'd never used a wet razor before. Always used electric razor. And we had indoctrination classes, and then we progressed on to a little bit of formation type stuff.
And so what was was there any difficult parts of boot camp or anything that you thought was hard?
I don't think so, no. We went to the rifle range. They checked us out on a 22, which didn't amount to much. And they give us a little bit of firefighting challenge. And we had to jump off a 60-foot tower into a big swimming pool. That, in other words, if you was on a carrier or any big ship, like a carrier from flight deck is to the water 60 foot. So I guess that was the most challenging thing.
They wanted to make sure you'd jump off if you had to?
Right. Either that or somebody'd push you. I went in July and I got out in just before my birthday in September.
Do you remember any specific instructors or any friends from boot camp?
Well, the 4 of us guys that went in kind of hung together, and weekends we'd go down to the hospital, 2 of us, and play our guitars at the hospital just to get out of some other things that other people had to do.
Did you need a permission to leave the base or anything?
We never got a chance to leave the base while we were there.
Okay. So it was other guys that were in the hospital?
Well, those are people that might have got sick or heat strokes or something like that, I guess, when they were marching. I believe that's what they were there for.
And then when you were in boot camp, did you know what your job was going to be?
No, because when I signed up, in order to get your schooling, you had to show them your high school diploma. And of course, they give us tests while we were there, and I qualified for aviation machinist mate, which would have been Norman, Oklahoma, and Memphis, Tennessee.
And did you end up going there?
Nope. I was pretty disappointed with that. One of the guys, I guess he went to some kind of aviation school, and the 3 of us didn't get any schooling, no.
So what happened after that?
Well, when it was time to go on leave after boot camp, let's see, I was the only one that was held back because they didn't have my orders. And my other buddies went home, and I stayed around there in a billet that to hold me over for about, I guess, 2 weeks till they found out where they were going to send me, which would have been the USS Randolph, and that was over in the Mediterranean.
So what was it like when you found out where you were going? Do you remember?
Well, I came home on leave then, and when I got home, I ran into my cousin that was in World War II, and he asked me where I was going, and I told him I was going to be aboard the USS Randolph. And he said, well, the last time I seen that, it was fire from the water on up. It was taken in I think number one elevator with a kamikaze plane. In the billet, when I came back in Norfolk, I stayed there 2 or 3 or 4 weeks before they put me on a plane up to Greenland and over to Port Leoti, Africa. And I stayed there about, probably 3 weeks, I guess. And then they put me on a plane to Athens, Greece to catch my ship. So when I got there, they took me down to the port where everybody was going after leave, and the U.S. Roosevelt was in, and I stood on the wharf there, and everybody was going on leave or came off of leave was going on the boats back out to sea where they were anchored, and the shore patrol says, well, aren't you going? I says, no, I'm here waiting here for the USS Randolph. He says, well, that's out at sea. So he says, well, just a minute. So he came back and he says, get on the little boat there, and they'll take you out to the FDR, where I spent probably a week in transit till we went out to sea, and then they flew me by helicopter from the Roosevelt to the Randolph.
So you finally got there.
Finally got there after about 3 months.
So what was it like when you first got there?
Well, when I first got there, we got there probably in the afternoon, I guess it was, and they took me up to my division and told me to go down to the crew shelter there on the starboard side where the 5mm gun was, where our crew shelter was, and they hooked me up with the guys there, and it started getting dark, and this one guy, Wizabicki, he said, you follow him around, and it was getting dark, so they were having a recovery of planes then, so I went up with him, and by that time it got dark, and I almost fell over into number one elevator because the stanchions didn't come up. So I said, the hell with this. So back down to the crew shelter I went, and I went down there, and he sat there laughing his ass off. He thought that was funny as hell, but damn near I lost my life there just to get started the first day. I don't know. When you're that age, you don't think about things like that.
So what did you get to work doing once you got there and got settled in?
I was a blue shirt, which is V1 division, and we chalked the planes up. If they weren't in the right place, we had to push them by hand because they weren't running, and that was our job. I finished out that cruise, about 3 months of that 6-month cruise. Then we came back to the States.
So, tell me about some memorable experiences.
Well, There wasn't too many then. Well, when we came back, we came through some hurricanes back across the Atlantic Ocean, and we slept up in the bow of the plane. That's where 120 people slept in one big billet, I guess you could say. And it was so rough that the bow would come out of the water, then it would pound on the forecastle, and then come back up and down. It made me sleepy, and I never got seasick from when the water was rough. So a lot of people did. Well, when we came back, I got 2 weeks leave, and I hitchhiked home. Spent 2 weeks home. Then I went back down, and we went into dry dock. And in dry dock, we had a chance to go down underneath the ship. And underneath the ship was just held up by these big giant blocks of wood. Then they drained the water out, and that's the only thing that held the ship up, which was 998 feet long. And it's kind of weird going under that. And they had a saltwater intake underneath there that was probably 30 feet wide and probably 5 feet long or high, which would take salt water in, and they would distill it. So that was the fresh water that they had aboard ship.
Mm-hmm. So after that break, then you went back out? You went on another cruise?
Well, let's see. Between there, we took some midshipmen aboard that went to Annapolis on a shakedown cruise. Mm-hmm. We went up and went down the St. Lawrence Seaway. We were the first carrier to ever go down the St. Lawrence Seaway to Quebec. Mm-hmm. And while we were down there, we got shore leave, and we had fireworks aboard there for the Canadians. I think they spent like $50,000 on fireworks from shooting them from the carrier over into the St. Lawrence Seaway, which would be equal to probably $200,000 or $300,000 worth of fireworks today.
And what was that? What was that for?
For the 4th of July.
4th of July. So you went up to Quebec, and then you came back through the St. Lawrence?
Yeah.
And then where'd you go after that?
Well, we went out to sea, and they showed the cadets about different things about the carrier and how the flight deck crew worked and things like that.
So you would go, your station was the Mediterranean.
Right. The Sixth Fleet was called. They always, every 6 months they took 2 carriers over there.
Okay.
And then the 2 carriers, one would be in port for 2 weeks, the other would be out for 2 weeks. Then they'd switch again.
And what kind of things were you doing out at sea?
Okay, all the pilots, like our second cruise, we'll say, which was 6 months, the pilots would take off and they'd fly different places and all of that, and they'd come back aboard. Our flight deck day was like from 5 o'clock in the morning till like midnight at night. Mm-hmm. And they'd land and take off and all that sort of stuff.
So what were you doing during this time?
The second cruise, they made me a tractor driver to haul the airplanes around, and sometimes I run the jet blast deflector, which was behind the jets.
Mm-hmm. And so, did you have any like close calls or near misses from this?
Oh yeah, we had quite a few close calls and misses. Let's see, in our 6-month med cruise, we lost 12 pilots. Nine pilots, 12 planes, and 3 white hats got killed in a 6-month med cruise, and this was during peacetime.
Tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, it was during normal operations. We'd have like touch and go. They'd come down and take off again on the angled deck, and if they didn't catch the arresting gear, they'd keep right on going off. And one night we had a touch and go deal. Well, when it got on the angle, the strut broke on the plane, and it went up on the side right along the catwalk and come across the flight deck and blew up as it went across the flight deck.
And that was right by you?
I was supposed to be running the jet blast deflector, but a new guy came aboard, so I sent him down there to run that, because I figured what I went through when I first got there, he would be safer down there. So I went up and worked in the pack. And when that plane come by me, I could almost reach up and touch the canopy, and I was digging my fingernails in the deck because I thought sure as hell I was going to take it right there.
And so it went right over where that guy was at the jet?
Right. He was standing in the catwalk running the jet blast deflector when he had to. And the rails is probably 3 feet on the catwalk, and I think the canopy scrubbed the catwalk right beside him. And I got up and run over to see if he was still in there. Stuck the flashlight down there, and his eyes were bigger than saucers.
You thought it got him?
I thought it got him, right.
You were trying to help him out.
I was trying to help him out and almost got him killed.
Jeez. What were some other times where you guys had casualties?
Well, one time we had 24-hour ops, and I was down at the mess deck. We were taking turns going down there eating, and one of the guys from Buffalo, Spencer his name was chopped up by a prop back in the backpack when they were getting ready to take off. And then a couple times up in the front of the pack, one guy got sucked into the intake of a jet, and it pulled his foul weather gear over his head, and all he lost was the tip of his fingers. Wonder he didn't, lose his head in there.
Yeah. What happens on the ship when something like that happens? What is the procedure?
Well, I know when that guy got chopped up with a prop, the only thing they could do was pick up what was left of him and hose the rest of him off the deck with fire hoses.
Were there any ceremonies or anything like that?
No, because, when we got done with that day that happened, they took us all that worked on the flight deck down to where the medics were, and they give us all a drink for medicinal purposes.
Jeez. Were you pretty shaken up after that?
Well, when that happened, I was down eating chow that day, so it didn't bother me because I didn't really see that. I know another incident happened when I was down in the hangar bay with my tractor. I pulled a plane out on the number 3 elevator, and pulled it way out on the edge, and they brought me up, and about that time they went into heel to port, and it tipped the ship up real tight to the port side, and it just rained before that, and when I come off the elevator, the deck was wet, and that plane was so heavy that it started pushing me right to the starboard side. And we were told if you were pulling a plane, you don't ever get off that tractor. You better stay on it, whether it went over the side or not. Well, the air boss told the captain to straighten it up because he seen what was happening, and I was within probably 5 feet of the edge of the ship when I got the plane stopped and the ship leveled out, or else I'd have been over the side.
Well, do you remember what was going through your mind?
Well, not really. I had my feet right on the brakes, big time. Those tractors weighed about 20 ton.
Yeah.
They were dual wheels with diesel fuel, and the plane captain, he had his brakes right on too, but it was just sliding and sliding.
There's a pilot in the plane?
No, it was one of the mechanics. They call him a plane captain until the pilot comes out and gets in the plane itself.
Okay.
So he was kind of having a hard time too, I think.
How'd you feel after that one?
Well, nothing you could do. I know lots of times when I had to pull planes up forward, which were ADs, the first ones you pulled up forward, after they shot off as many as they wanted to, you had to go back in the pack and bring them up the front of the bow, roll down over, and you had to bring them up to the closest to the bow as you could. So you drove your tractor up, and it kind of went on an angle down over after they unhooked it and went back and got another one, which was kind of a hairy deal too.
Because you're right on the edge?
Right on the edge, because there's no fence or anything.
So would you do that in rough seas, or?
Well, you had to. Whenever you were working, yeah.
Were there any other instances of guys getting killed that you can remember?
Well, they had a mid-air crash when one guy come in and took off because he didn't catch the resting gear. He had a AD, and the other ADs were coming around, and he plowed into the one that they were coming around. That was on a deal where they had a prince or a king or something at board one day. They wanted to show him flight operations, and it was supposed to be a holiday, so we had to do it, and the guys were pretty mad over that.
What happened right after that? Do you remember what it was like when it happened?
Well, a lot of people were a little mad over the situation.
Yeah. Were you mad about it?
Well, little. I guess you could say that, yeah, because we weren't supposed to be a holiday for us, but they were trying to appease these people that came aboard, and we had to go do flight ops for them as a show, basically, and.
Yeah. So everything stopped after that, and what?
Yeah, that was all done then.
I remember you told me one time about a guy who got impaled.
Impaled?
On a.
Oh yeah. He got up behind the jet, and it blew him over the rail, and he was impaled on one of the railings. But he didn't die.
He was okay?
Yeah.
So there's a lot it was a pretty dangerous job even during...
They always said it was the second dangerous job in the world, except for some coal mine someplace. Working on a flight deck.
Did you make some good friends while you were doing that?
Yeah, made a lot of friends, and I kept up with some of them once you got out, and of course everybody went their own separate way, so it's kind of hard to keep up with people.
What did you guys do for fun, or what were?
Well, when we went into we'll say port. The only port we could tie up in was Naples. The rest of them, we had to anchor out and take the Liberty launches in. One night the Liberty launches, it was so rough out, we had to go board a destroyer and spend the night because we couldn't get back out to the ship.
And what were some? Do you have any funny stories or?
Well, I know a lot of the guys went and drank awful lot, and you'd get aboard that Liberty launch, and it had a cover over it, and it was dark. Everybody would get in there, and you'd head back out there, and all of a sudden you'd hear, ooh, ooh, and you didn't know where it was coming from, and you'd hope it wasn't the guy next to you.
What were some memorable times you had in port, different cities that you visited, or
well, a lot of the Barcelona, Palma, Spain, Naples, Athens, Corfu. That was just some of them. I did go up to the Eiffel Tower, the Leaning Tower of Pisa, and went up to a few other places. We stopped in Gibraltar coming out one time. When you anchored out, they would come out in barges, and you'd throw the garbage on the barges. Of course, a lot of them brought a lot of people with them. They'd pick them through the garbage, and they'd get oranges and stuff like that. And then there'd be a guy that might come out in a rowboat, a couple of guys would come out, and some guys would lower a bucket down with some money in it, and they'd put some booze in it, and they'd raise it back up. And this one guy, he didn't put the booze in it for him. He grabbed a fire bottle off the water, or off the bulkhead, and dropped it right through his boat, and he ended up having to swim home.
So you guys are always getting up to things like that, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. That's all I can think of right now offhand.
Any other, I guess, what did you do? So you started cutting hair?
Yeah, I learned to cut hair because when you worked on the flight deck, you always had a flyaway before you pulled in. So the guys that worked the flight deck couldn't get down to the barber shop. So I'd set the guys on a butt kit and just trim their hair up a little bit so they could get off. They had to have some look halfway decent, basically.
Right.
And I started out just running the scissors a little bit and making it sound good and cutting it up the back. And then,
thought you knew what you were doing?
Well, I don't know. They were satisfied as long as they could go on shore and get drunk. One guy had a guitar there, and he played it a little bit, I guess. And I always, in high school up through, I always played guitar a little bit. And I said, what do you want for that guitar? And he says, $10. I'll take $10. It's not that good a guitar. So I handed him the $10, and he handed me the guitar, and I walked over to this stainless steel sink and broke the guitar over the stainless steel sink. And he said, what did you do that for? I said, I always wanted to see how easy it was to break one.
Any other kind of encounters on shore with the locals, or did you guys ever get into any fights on shore?
I never got in a fight because I didn't drink. But I ran into a buddy here I went to school with that was on a destroyer over there. And I was in a bar drinking a Coke, I guess it was, and with a couple other guys. And he come in there, and I recognized him, Bill Robinson. And I said, hey, Bill, what are you doing here? Oh, he come over. He was pretty well oiled up. And he said, let's go out drinking. I says, well, I'm not a drinker. He says, come on with me. So he says, we'll go out this door over here. And we went out this back door, up this flight of stairs, jumped off into the street. And I says, what's going on here? He said, well, I wanted to get out of it this way. Then there's another guy that was 2 years ahead of me in school. He was on a destroyer. That was Charlie Hook. He played guitar, and they had our ship had a band on it. And any time a ship pulled up and took fuel from us, or got mail from us, or we got mail for them, their band would play, and there's Charlie Hook over there on the destroyer strumming away. My cousin always said, staggered and shook with Charlie Hook. No, swing and sway with Sammy Kaye, staggered and shook with Charlie Hook.
That's good.
Then one time I was standing JOD watch on the after deck there where all the non-commissioned officers come aboard. These two guys come up carrying this big old box, and the JOD said, what's in the box? Oh, it's a Telefunken. We bought it on shore. And I bumped the guy, and I says, I don't think that's it. He says, set the box down, let's open it up. And it was right full of booze. They were trying to sneak it aboard.
So what'd you do with it?
I didn't have nothing to do with that. I guess they probably the JOD took it, and those guys had a blast with it. They were commissioned officers.
So you weren't really allowed to have alcohol on the ship?
Not aboard a ship. Weren't supposed to have women either, but they tried to sneak them aboard too occasionally.
How'd that go over?
Well, every once in a while they'd be out at sea and they'd say, well, there's a woman back in such and such a compartment. So they'd fly them off with one of the helicopters. Then the guys would get in trouble and spend some time in brig. When we were on that second cruise, Red West was one of the Marines aboard there. He was Elvis Presley's bodyguard because he joined the Marines, so he was aboard our ship, Red West. He's played in a lot of movies.
Did you ever talk to him, or
No.
you don't really remember?
I knew him, or knew of him, because he would march the prisoners that, went AWOL or got drunk and came aboard, and of course they'd shave their heads. They'd be in the brig, and they'd march them up and down the hangar bay to give them exercise. When we were down on a shakedown cruise down in Guantanamo Bay, we had one guy in our division, V1 division. He was going to steal one of the lifeboats and go over and join Castro, but they caught him before he did that.
What, he just why was he trying to do that?
He thought that was the way to go. We had a lot of, I don't know, different guys that they weren't my kind of guys, I guess you could say.
I guess you get a lot of different people.
Oh yeah, we had guys that went AWOL, and they were nice guys in our division, but they come back, either send them to the brig or give them some time in prison someplace.
Were there any times that I guess you weren't the best things to remember, or bad times?
Well, no bad times, like I said, I was glad to be in there. I know when I got to be a real short timer, we always had to stand crash tractor behind the island, which is where the captain, it's the island that stick up. They called it an island. And then that's where the crash tractor set, because when they come in, they catch the ropes, cables, and when I got to be short timer, I figured I don't want to get killed, so I'd put the tractor in park, leave her idle, and stand there by the end of the island. So if it come in and crashed, which some planes did crash, because you had to go tow them out and all that stuff, I didn't want to get killed when I got to be a short timer.
So what if it was more dangerous to be on the tractor?
At that time, yeah.
Because you couldn't, if a plane was coming at you, you couldn't get off, or
Right.
Gotcha.
Well, also too, when we were over in the Mediterranean, we'll say a plane would come in, it had live ammunition on it, kind of like rockets. They'd come in and they'd catch the hook would catch the cables and stop the plane, and the rockets would go up into the pack sometimes. I mean, that happened a few times, not every time. The guys would scatter. And when it was in the wintertime, that was the first cruise, the wintertime, when the jets would come in, it was so cold that once they shut the jet off, the heat would be coming out of the back of the jet, and we'd get over and hump up behind it and try to stay warm. I know we had, I think, 3 or 4 pilots on that second cruise that died. They flew off and never came back, and they don't know what happened to them.
Was it like a nighttime mission, or?
Well, even daytime, I guess, too. I don't know. It happened so often, kind of, and you work from 5 in the morning till midnight or 8 or 9 o'clock at night, and it was a long day. I don't know. I just kind of, I was young, and I didn't pay that much attention to it.
How did they tell it? Is there an official announcement when something like that happens? Or?
Well, I guess if they didn't come back, they told their plane captains that the plane didn't come back, and the word kind of got passed around, I guess.
Gotcha.
And that was during peacetime too. Mm-hmm. So we lost quite a few people just during peacetime. So I can imagine what wartime would be like.
Yeah. Was it mainly pilots?
I think 12 planes, 9 pilots, and 3 white hats. White hats were non-commissioned.
So it was like the guy that got chopped up, or
one guy chopped up. Yeah, well, okay, the one guy got impaled. That's right. I said he didn't. And one other guy. I'm not sure how how he died. I can't remember that now.
But you said the guy that got impaled, he survived?
No, he didn't. No, he didn't. That's right, he didn't, because it got him right in the gut. That's with the three white. One guy got chopped up with a prop. He was saving his money to buy a Corvette when he got back. Never got a chance to use it. And the guy impaled, that was V2 division. He got up, the jets were coming out the back. He got up too soon. That blew him over the side and impaled him on that catwalk pillar type thing.
The guy that got chopped up, how did that happen?
Well, I'm not sure. I was down eating chow that when that actually happened. It was a two bladed prop job that he got chopped up that brought our mail in and out. And I don't know if he pulled a chalk and got up, come forward, or what. I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
What was left of him, they put him in a bag and took him down in cold storage. That's what they did with people that got killed during the cruise or whatever.
Tell me about when Churchill came aboard.
Well, that was our second cruise. We were in Nice, France, and they wanted him to come aboard. Of course, then I was standing side boy duty, and when he came aboard, I was a side boy when he came aboard. And at the time, I didn't think much of it. Just another salute somebody that came aboard. It had 8 people, which would be like a president or anything like that. And he had a villa down there after he retired in England, and they wanted him to come aboard. So we went down there, and we always sat in chairs. And then when they brought him aboard in the dinghy, he come up the gangplank, and everybody stood there, 4 on each side, and the guy blew the pipe and piped him aboard, and we saluted him, and that's all there was to it. But at the time, I didn't think nothing of it. But now that I'm older, it was quite a experience, I guess you could say, or a thing to be proud of, I guess.
So you guys didn't really understand the significance
of that? No, not at the time, because we were all young guys, 18, 19 years old. We're doing what we had to do. That was our job that day.
Didn't you also mention Walter Cronkite came aboard?
That was, that was just before I got off in 1960. He came aboard, and he was doing an article for Victory at Sea. That's when we had helicopters aboard, because we were anti-submarine warfare then. Before we were CVA attacked, and we were CVS then. And they gave me him. He sat on my tractor hood, and I drove him around the flight deck, and he pointed this out and pointed that out to the people that were taking his pictures. And then we went down on the elevator, number 2 elevator, and I drove him around the hangar bay, and we came back up, and it was kind of nice, because back in those days he was a good reporter.
Did you know who he was at the time?
Yeah, I knew who he was, yeah. And I got that was about, I think, July or August of 60, and I got discharged in September of 60. And then when I was home and working in Rochester, they mentioned it on TV that Victory at Sea, that Walter Cronkite was aboard the USS Randolph on a Sunday night. Well, I had to go back to work in Rochester, so I never did see it until you went and picked it out of the archives, and I got a chance to see that. But you couldn't see me, but you could see him on the tractor of mine.
Because he was just sitting
up on the hood.
What did you do when you got out?
Well, I left Norfolk, drove up to my aunt's in Norristown, Pennsylvania, stayed a couple days there, and I got home Saturday afternoon, and I drove. I had a car by then, and Sunday night I was sitting in Rochester, New York, and Monday morning I had a job.
What was the job?
Wiring up different parts for Titan missile and things like that.
How did it feel to be out? Were you glad to be out? Were you?
Yes, because I didn't get the schooling I was supposed to. When I went in with the idea of staying 20 years. But they didn't give me the school they promised me, so I started counting down from 500 days.
That was the mechanic?
Yeah, the aviation machinist mate.
So, how many cruises did you do total?
1.5 cruises. Then when we were CVS, we had the Atlantic cruise from Cape Hatteras to New York City, back and forth, 2 weeks out and 2 weeks in, with anti-submarine warfare, with helicopters.
Was that more? Were those operations a little bit more intense, or what were they like?
Well, it's the same thing, type of thing, but it wasn't. Well, we did have some planes that did fly off, but most of them were helicopters, and they'd fly out and drop these sonar things into the ocean and see if there's any submarines down there. One time, when we were off, probably in New Jersey, I guess it was, this is a story we heard a couple days later, that this submarine surfaced, and they radioed to them, and they said they were such and such, and they looked up on the sheet where that, they told them where they were, so they went back down, and later somebody looked it up, and that submarine was supposed to be on the west coast, so they always figured it was a Russian trawler type deal that was following us along.
Gotcha. Because was the political climate pretty? Was the Cold War kind of getting kicked off?
Oh yeah, it was getting taken off. Yeah.
So was that really the one thing that you guys were out there sort of looking for? Or?
Yeah, that's we had the protection from New York City down, back and forth, and planes took off and flew around, and helicopters flew off, and if they hit on something, they would drop flares. Other planes would drop flares, and then they'd go out and drop their sonar back down into it.
Did that happen often, or?
Well, a lot of that was, I think, just trying to teach people the people how to do things too, probably.
Did that feel a little bit different than the cruises? Because it almost felt like you guys were doing something.
No, we were all doing the same thing, whether it was a cruise over in the Mediterranean or working there.
Did it feel a little bit different though, because you were almost like defending?
Yes. Well, we were doing our part over there. Just before I came aboard, over in the Mediterranean, they were in close to Lebanon, and they could see the flashes from Lebanon, because I guess they were having problems in Lebanon, and that was before I came aboard.
Right. And what did you go on to do, kind of just after your service? So just tell me what. Well,
when I first got out, I thought maybe I'd get a job at an airport, since I had flight experience towing aircraft around. And I went over to Bradford and checked around, but they weren't hiring. So then I thought I'd like to be a barber. But then once I got up to Rochester, I said I give up on that, because I enjoyed doing the stuff I was doing.
What were you doing?
I was working on the Titan missile project, and then I got laid off 2.5 years later, walked up the street and got a job being a product evaluation engineer for 8 years.
What was the Titan missile project?
Well, that was a war problem. It was a missile problem that they were working on in a war. All I did was wire things up, so I wasn't really involved that much in it.
Gotcha. And you said that you did keep in touch with some of the guys
you
went in with?
One day I was, this was just after I got out of the service, I was walking down Goodman Street in Rochester, and coming my way was this guy, Robert Foy, that lived in Williamsport, and he got out of the service before I did. And I met him because he came up there. And I didn't have too many other encounters of the people.
You didn't really stay in touch with them that long, I guess?
No, I just talked to them then, and I just had gotten up there and started working, so I was sleeping over a bar. I had an apartment over a bar, and then one of my other buddies I went in with got out. He was on a kiddie cruise too. He got out in November and came up. Then we got an apartment together. And then the next spring, one of my other buddies came up in June. He got us, and we 4 or 5 of us stayed in this one apartment and came home weekends. And then guys kept coming and going, my brother-in-law and everybody else, and they'd get a job at Kodak and so on and so forth.
How do you think that your military experience kind of affected the rest of your life, or affected?
Well, it gave me good work ethics. I've never drew a bit of unemployment because I've always been able to find a decent job, and I've never wanted to, basically.
Did you feel sort of proud to have done that? And
Oh yes, yes,
and
I would do it again. Yes, it was a good part of my life. I'm glad I went in.
Well, thanks for talking with me.
Well, I'm glad I could tell you a little bit of something. I'm glad I went in. I got other friends that's been in the Army, and they told a lot of stories, and they're glad they went in too.
Yeah.
I think everybody should go in. It makes a real good person out of you. Just like my grandson Kyle. He's a hell of a worker now because he learned how to work in the service.
So you think that really set you on a good path?
Oh yes, and that set him on a good path. He was blown up over in Afghanistan, and I think it made all the difference in the world of how he works.
Anything else you'd like anyone to know?
Not really.
Okay.
Send the money home.
All right. Thanks, Grandpa.
Yeah.